Okay, I want to retell the story of when my mother took me to the Crystal Pool at Glen Echo Amusement Park. And I figure the way she did that, it was to let Aunt Rosemary know that I was not the biological son of America's Manatee. I was around 8 or 9 years old, and this was a very unusual outing, that I should be taken alone to the Crystal Pool, not with any of the other kids, siblings. This was very unusual for a number of reasons. My mother had 5 children. Why she would have just taken me on one day? That was very unusual. And secondly, that was the only time, as I can recall, that she ever took me to swim at that pool, or any of the kids. I don't think she ever took any of the kids to swim there ever. She took me that one time. We did not go there and swim. That was a public swimming pool, and we never went to it, ever. So this was unusual in lots of ways. We never swam at that pool, and she's going to take me alone with Aunt Rosemary. Now, I distinctly remember getting undressed in the locker room. It was an ancient locker room, going back to like the 1940s or 30s. It was ancient in there. And I went up to the pool, and I was there alone in the pool. And I saw my mother and Aunt Rosemary were on a blanket on a grassy area outside. I think they were outside the Crystal Pool. They didn't really pay to get in there. They just watched me from the fence outside, but I really don't remember. I don't know. I remember if they were actually in the area fenced off within the amusement park for the Crystal Pool. At any rate, I gotta say that shortly before Aunt Rosemary passed away, like in the last year or two of her life, I was over at her house because I used to mow the lawn. And one night, she started to talk to me about my father. And we had this conversation about my father and his mother. Now, how would Aunt Rosemary have known my mother? Not well. I'm not sure they ever got together. Well, why would they have? Anything she knew about that mother, she would have known from my mother. And it was just commonly known within our family that the man of the year's mother and his sister hated my mother with a hatred that knew no boundaries. It was just a limitless hatred. And so she would have heard about that mother from my mother, because I don't recall they had any opportunity to get together. When I don't recall they would have ever even been together at all, outside of like the marriage day when my parents got married. She would have met the mother on that day. Well, as I said, Aunt Rosemary was a nun, a Catholic nun for 7 years, and then dropped out of being a nun because of what she called women's troubles. She didn't want to be a burden to the church with her women's troubles, so she dropped out. And she became a teacher in a very highly regarded Catholic school at Chevy Chase Circle in Washington, D.C., Northwest Washington, D.C., and she was there for over 50 years. She was a highly loved, highly prized teacher at that school. So this was a school for the wealthy. We're going to keep a mediocre teacher for their affluent kids who they want to send to the best colleges in the country. No, they're not. So they highly valued Aunt Rosemary. She did real well there. So just one night, she started to talk to me about my father. Now, we had never had such a conversation before. Okay? There's a quotation in the scriptures which says, God is in heaven and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. And Aunt Rosemary was not someone who talked much at all. Okay. Well, she's telling me what a horrible man that father of mine was, and his mother was. And I can't believe it. For the first time ever, I'm talking to somebody who knew that father and knew his mother somehow, and knew how evil the both of them were, and I was just so grateful to hear that. I hadn't heard that from anybody ever, and I never heard it from anyone else. It was just complete agreement with my own views on both of those reprehensibly evil creatures, let's call them. So it took some years of reflection for me to realize that if the man of the year had been my biological father, Aunt Rosemary would never have had that conversation with me. And the reason would have been, it would have been breaking one of the 10 Commandments. Honor thy father and thy mother. Okay? She would have been encouraging me to dishonor that father by the way we were talking about him. And if he had been my father, she would not have done that. She did that as her way of letting me know that was not my father. And so I've thought back to that very odd, unusual day when I was around 8 years old, when my mother brings me to the crystal pool alone and has that meeting with Aunt Rosemary where we're talking about my was a very serious conversation. So we ended up looking over at them often. I'm in the pool. I want to add as a footnote here to what I just said about this odd outing at the Crystal Pool. The Crystal Pool was where my mother and that man who was supposed to have been my father, that's where they had their first date. And the reason that my mother betrayed, or must have betrayed, America's Man of the Year the way she did by having me with someone else was because he had betrayed her. His behavior, as the alcoholic he was, had just become unbearable for her, obviously, by the time he had gotten into medical school with her help. She had given up a career in acting to help him become a doctor. And I was conceived during his first year in medical school. So he'd had his first semester, and he was starting his second semester. And that's when she conceived me with another man. And the reason would have been, obviously, that once he got into medical school, he started to become the unbearably evil man that he was to her, and this caused her to betray him the way she did. Now, that is why she chose the Crystal Pool as a place to let Aunt Rosemary know of her betrayal of this man, because this was the setting of their very idealistically regarded first date that my mother recounted to me many times how wonderful a day that was for her. However, later, the relationship had soured, and by the time he became a doctor, he got his first job in Norfolk, Virginia. She's telling me that his drunken tirades and rants and absolutely evil, negative scoldings would go on so long and were so irrational and baseless that she said that one time she put her fingers in her ears like this and laid back on the bed while he was talking. So I wanted to add that the choice of the Crystal Pool as the place where my mother would let Aunt Rosemary know I was not this evil man's son, it was meaningful.